All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking the incredible rise, the spectacular fall, and the ultimate triumph of arguably the most powerful banker in America, Jamie Dimon. We're looking at a prodigy who built an empire from scratch, survived a massive, incredibly public corporate exile, and then returned to completely conquer the financial world. This isn't just a story about banking. It's literally a masterclass in resilience and strategy that you can apply to pretty much any highly competitive field. Picture this. It's late 2008. The housing crisis is raging, and a once-in-a-lifetime financial storm is tearing through Wall Street. Dozens of monumental legacy banks are literally vanishing overnight. It was absolute, sheer panic. Yet while the rest of the entire industry was in a terrifying freefall, one executive relied on his ruthless preparation to emerge entirely unscathed. Not only did he survive the meltdown, but he capitalized on the unprecedented chaos to make his bank the absolute largest in America. And it all comes down to this core philosophy, the fortress balance sheet. Jamie Dimon firmly believed that having a financial fortress, meaning absolutely no dangerous borrowed money, and filling your reserves with assets that actually hold their true value, is the only real way to prepare for a shock like that. But to fully grasp how he built this unbreakable fortress and why he was so uniquely prepared for a disaster of that magnitude, we really have to go back to the very beginning. When you map out Dimon's career, it's basically a classic corporate hero's journey. He starts as this ambitious, fiercely loyal protege in the 1980s, suffers a devastating corporate exile in the late 90s, and then undergoes this massive transformation to become the ultimate survivor of the Great Recession. Every single stop along this path, every massive failure and every huge victory forged the exact resilience he'd need when the global economy eventually collapsed. Right out of the gate, Dimon just totally bucked the status quo. Even back at Harvard Business School, he was a massive nonconformist. While his peers were buttoned up in tailored suits with highly conservative viewpoints, Dimon was this vocal Democrat walking around in jeans and leather jackets. But get this, he graduates in the top 5% of his class, gets flooded with prestigious Wall Street job offers, and rejects all of them. Instead, he takes a staggering pay cut, literally 1/3 of a standard starting salary, just to learn the ropes from a scrappy, legendary dealmaker named Sandy Weil. And here's where we see his first unprecedented leap of faith. After leaving American Express to follow his mentor, Sandy Weil, the duo needed a new launchpad. They found it in a struggling loan company in Baltimore called Commercial Credit. To prove his absolute commitment, Dimon, who was barely in his early 30s at the time, took his entire net worth of $425,000 and invested it right into the business. He literally bet his life savings on his own ability to turn a failing company around. And man, did that ruthless efficiency pay off. When they arrived, Commercial Credit was a mess, limping along with just a 4% return on equity. Dimon and Wells stepped in, viciously cut costs, and laid off 10% of the workforce on day one. The results? Just immediate. In 1 year, they skyrocketed to an 18% return on equity, generating $100 million in profit. That wild success kicked off a decade-long acquisition spree that eventually created Citigroup, the biggest financial conglomerate in America. But, being that uncompromising definitely creates some friction. Dimon relentlessly preached that you have to treat everyone equally, from the mailroom to the boardroom. So when Sandy Weil put his own daughter in Dimon's division, things got incredibly tense. Her division was severely underperforming modern competitors like Vanguard, and Dimon flat out refused to give her a promotion. He simply wouldn't play favorites, not even for the daughter of his boss and mentor. That specific, stubborn adherence to his own principles, well, it was the catalyst for a permanent rift. After 15 years of conquering Wall Street side by side, Dimon was abruptly, shockingly, fired by Sandy Weil. Just like that. The guy who was basically next in line to run the most powerful bank in the country was suddenly unemployed, having to go home and literally reassure his young daughters that they weren't going to end up sleeping on the streets. But here's the absolute kicker. He didn't spiral. He didn't let this massive public humiliation destroy him. He fully owned the failure, famously stating that getting fired impacted his net worth, sure, but it couldn't touch his self-worth. It's such a phenomenal distinction. Instead of lashing out, he stepped back, embraced reality, and quietly bided his time to plot an epic comeback, knowing the best revenge would be undeniable success. Fast forward to 1999, and he finds his comeback vehicle. He's brought in as a wartime CEO to save Bank One, this chaotic, failing financial conglomerate out in Chicago. The stock was tanking, culture was toxic, customer service was awful. So what does Dimon do to prove to a skeptical board that he's all in? He reaches into his own pocket and buys $50 million of Bank One stock. He demanded total skin in the game, refusing to put his employees at risk without exposing himself to the exact same downside. It was a brutal turnaround, much tougher than he thought. But he stepped in and did the highly unpopular things no one else had the stomach for. He looked entrenched executives in the eye and stripped away their lavish entitlements. Country club memberships, company cars, gone. And to right this rapidly sinking ship, he also had to make the agonizing, deeply unpopular choice to lay off 12,000 people to save the core business. To clear out the garbage once and for all, he did something super counterintuitive. He took a staggering $500 million loss right up front in the year 2000. Wall Street actually loved it, because he was finally facing reality instead of hiding the mess like the previous leadership. And it paid off exponentially. Just 1 year later, powered entirely by his sheer will and discipline, Bank One posted an astonishing $2.6 billion profit. Now, he didn't just pop champagne to celebrate. He used those windfall profits to achieve his ultimate goal, building that fortress balance sheet. He stockpiled this enormous cash reserve. Because his financial footing was so unshakable, Bank One became the perfect acquisition target for JPMorgan Chase, who was actually struggling at the time. And the irony is just beautiful. JPMorgan didn't just want Bank One's branches. They specifically structured the deal so Jamie Dimon would eventually become the CEO of the entire combined megabank. Okay, so now we hit 2007. The housing market is starting to violently crack. And the irony here is just wild. While Dimon was carefully reinforcing his fortress at JPMorgan, the guy who took Dimon's old job over at Citigroup, Chuck Prince, was blindly accelerating straight into the subprime mortgage disaster. He notoriously said that as long as the market was providing liquidity, they had to keep dancing. Let that sink in for a second, openly chasing short-term profits while completely ignoring a catastrophic systemic risk. So what happens when the music actually stops? While the rest of Wall Street is in a total freefall, waking up to the fact that they're holding trillions in toxic mortgages, Dimon had quietly reduced JPMorgan's subprime exposure down to almost zero. He was sitting on an absolute ocean of cash. He had perfectly positioned his fortress for the crash, and JPMorgan famously didn't lose money in a single quarter during the greatest financial crisis of our generation. It got so bad that when the legendary 85-year-old investment bank Bear Stearns imploded, a bank trading at $170 a share just a year prior, the government literally begged Dimon to step in and save the global financial system. Because he was the only executive with the cash to actually pull it off, he ruthlessly negotiated to buy Bear Stearns for just $2 a share. $2, less than the cost of a cup of coffee for a historic institution. Meanwhile, Citigroup gets absolutely decimated by the crash. Sandy Weil even publicly admits that firing Dimon was the single biggest mistake of his entire career. Dimon stood alone at the top, the last banker standing, and he survived because he anchored himself to these unyielding principles: treat everyone equally, always have skin in the game, build your fortress, tell the truth, and never ever pander to the nonsense. So, racking up this explainer, we really see the undeniable power of pragmatic resilience. Dimon's journey proves that surviving at the very top isn't about blind luck. It's about a level of preparation that borders on the extreme. So it leaves us with this final, really compelling thought to consider. If a sudden, completely unanticipated crisis hit your career or your industry tomorrow, are you operating from a fortress, or are you just hoping the music never stops?